Hey everybody, today I've got a 2016 Volkswagen Jetta TSI with a 2-liter, I do believe, and it needs a clutch. So the first thing we're going to do on this car is we're going to have to get all this stuff out of here. So we're going to have to get the battery out, we're going to have to get the air cleaner housing apart and out, and then whatever else plastic down here so we can get to the top of the transmission. And that's where we're going to start. So, you know, I'm just going to give you a basic overview on how to do it. So basically we're going to unbolt the air cleaner here and get this up out of the way. We're going to take the battery out and I'll come back and show you what it looks like. All right, we got the battery out. So you take the two 10mm terminals off, and then there's a 13 that holds the battery down. This is the cover. You slide the cover off and slide the battery out. So the air cleaner, you take the clamp off here, and then on the air cleaner there is a T30 Torx. You take that out. You don't have to take the top of the air cleaner out because it's held in by these two. There's a push pin here and a push pin there. There's a hose here and a hose here, and then the air cleaner assembly will slide out. Now I took the engine cover off also, and then you have to disassemble this. This is what goes here and here, so you disassemble all that. So this is what it looks like after you get the air cleaner and the battery out. So now you have to get this out. There's a 10mm headed bolt here, here, and here. And now this should slide out. And now you can see the top of the transmission mount. So there is a, the positive battery terminal is connected here. So we have to get that disconnected. So then this just comes out and you can see the linkages are here. Here's more linkages. Here's the starter. We're going to take the starter out. Here's one of the upper transmission bolts right here we're going to have to get out. So let me get in here and start disassembling the shift linkages and get the starter out, and we'll get this out. And then probably after we get all this stuff out, then we'll start working underneath the car. Alrighty, so I pulled the linkages up and I disconnected the plastic piece that retains the linkages and got them up off the bottom. There's 3 bolts that hold those in, got those out of the way. This bracket here runs from the mount over here, get that out of the way. Then there's 2 13mm headed bolts here and here for the hydraulic cylinder. So I just put that out of the way. Don't need to disconnect it or anything or lose any fluid. I took out the linkage, top of the linkage here, because it might get caught on something. So it was a 13mm nut, took that out. We got the top bolt out of the starter right here, which is this massively long bolt. And then we got the 2 upper bolts out. I'm not going to take these 2 bolts out yet. I want to try to get the starter out. The other bolt I'm going to try to get from the bottom. So it's time to go up in the air and try to get the other bolt out of the starter to get that up out of our way. I would put my engine cradle across the top, but I don't know, there's nothing to hook it on that I can see, so maybe we'll just put a jack stand underneath the oil pan. So now when we go underneath, we're gonna have to get the axles out, and the axles are bolted in, so we're gonna have to unbolt the axles and get the starter out. Let's get the shields out from underneath and the tires off, and I'll come back. All right, we put the Volkswagen in the air, pop the tires off, we pop the shield off, and you can get a good look at the bottom of the Volkswagen transmission. So starter, we got another 13mm nut and a bracket that holds a wire harness, and then another bolt underneath that, so that should let the starter come right on out. We have this bracketry here to take out, long bolt here. This has to come out. The axles. So the axles have, I call it spline drive. Some people call them triple square. And where else? And then over here, we should have some more transmission bolts. Like I said, I think I'm just gonna put a jiggle jack underneath this to hold it. On this car here, the K-frame, the K-member that holds the rack and pinion and the lower control arms and everything, on the GTI's everything. The car is so much smaller. This comes over here, kind of blocks the transmission. So on this car here, I think we can leave all this here and we're going to be able to slide the differential out without any problem. We got to take the ball joints loose, or we're definitely going to do the ball joints. We're going to take the ball joints loose here so we can get the axles out. So let me start working on it. Let me go ahead and get the starter out. Oh, and here's some more transmission bolts right here that we also have to take out. So now, get the starter, we'll start working on the axles and the mount. And then once I get all this stuff off, I'll probably get on a ladder, and we might have to take this off to get up here. Can I get to these bolts? No, these bolts are not going to come out, so we're going to have to take the upper bolts out of the mount up top, so I'm going to have to get on a ladder to get those. All right, I don't know where I left off, but I took the one bolt out of the starter, so I got the starter out. I got all the bolts out of the bell housing here. This axle, took those special socket to get the axle out here, and then I had to use a 15/16 12-point socket to get the nut off the axle. We take the nuts off here to get this out of the way to get the axle. So the axle's down there. There's the starter and the lower starter bolt, that is out. On the passenger side, I've taken the ball joint loose here. I'm just going to leave the axle in, and I've got it bungee corded up out of the way. So this is the last bolt that's holding the transmission. As you can see, I started loosening it, and it started to spread open there. So now I'm going to have to get on a ladder and go up and disconnect the trans mount. We're going to put a jiggle jack underneath, and then we can start getting ready to slide the transmission out of the car. Alrighty, so I disconnected the 2 bolts up here for this mount. Now to make this a lot easier, we've pulled the fender well out, have it bungee corded back. We're going to take out these bolts here to get this mount out, so this is not going to be in the way of the frame rail. And I got my jiggle jack underneath, so we're just going to let the jiggle jack down a little bit so we can get to these bolts there. Are they 16s? They are 16, so we're going to take those out to get this mount completely out of the way. Then after that, we have the 1 bolt here, and we'll start sliding the transmission out. Alright, you can see that we got the transmission out. The differential still did get kind of hooked up in here with using the transmission jack, but there's the pressure plate right there. Now we don't need light. So now we got to get the pressure plate off, and the clutch plate's behind there. We're going to take this off. We had to take this off because this was grabbing on the transmission. I think when we go back in with the transmission, we're just going to have to manhandle it and put this differential up first and then rotate it and slide it in. So I don't even think we're going to be using the transmission jack. I really don't want to take that piece out. I guess the way you're supposed to do it is take that piece out, but you can get them out without doing it. Alrighty, I got the new pressure plate and the clutch in here. These are 12.9mm sockets. Luckily I had one to get that, and this is supposed to be loose like this because there's no springs in the pressure plate to take up the shock. So that's what takes up the shock when you're trying to get going. Now there is a little bit of lateral play back and forth, but it's not a lot on this one. And we talked to some guys at Volkswagen, so they never changed the flywheels on the gasoline engines. But I have seen some videos of this being like this on the diesels, because the diesels have so much more torque. So as you saw in the time lapse of getting the transmission out, we kind of got hung up here. So really you probably should take the K-member out, but we're not going to. So we're just going to go ahead and get the transmission at an angle so that is up, so the differential is up, so we can get the differential thrown up above the slide back in. So actually our trans jack is going to be no help to us. So these are torqued depending on what bolts you have, either 6 or 7mm. You're gonna have to figure out what size bolts you have. and they're usually like 177 inch-pounds. That's what I did on this one because these are 7mm bolts. And I think I'm gonna leave it at that. You just reassemble. You put the transmission back in, starter goes back in. We're also gonna take, this is a turbo car. We're gonna get this turbo cooler out of the way because we were kind of against it. There's a boss on the transmission that was against it. All right, everybody, I think I'm gonna leave this one here. I have to get this car back together. So basically it goes back together as it comes apart. You know, on the Golfs, on the smaller cars, you have to take this K member out because it's just impossible. So, all right, everybody, I'm gonna leave it here. Thanks for watching. You can also subscribe right down there in that corner. Please give me a thumbs up if you like my automotive videos.